Good. What a story. We are in the Gospel of John. What a story. The Gospel of John is all about belief or not belief. Belief comes many, many times in this Gospel. And faith/belief. Now, what do we see here? A supernatural miracle, right? A dead man is raised. Is that something that happens daily? Probably not. At least we've not experienced it in daily life. Is it possible? Yes, of course. Because of the power of God and God only. I was wondering, and this is a question for us, what's easier for us to believe? That supernatural miracles do happen or do not happen? What's easier to believe? That miracles happen, supernatural miracles, or that they don't happen? That's easier to believe for us. Okay, that's very good. As human beings, is it easier for us to believe? Good, okay, there's different...
As human beings, it's easier, just as human beings, it's easier to believe that miracles don't happen.
That they don't happen, okay. So we have two different opinions here.
As believers, we have to believe that they do happen as believers.
Right, but what is easier?
Because of our sinful natures, it's easier to believe that they don't happen.
Right, okay. Right. So for some it's easier to believe, and for some is, I think that represents the things. Why? Because we are more living in the natural, and sometimes we're more of the earthly rather than the heavenly in some ways. No? That's why sometimes it's hard to believe if somebody says, oh, I prayed and I got healed. And we're like, really? I mean, that's great for you. We want to believe it. But then there's this thought in our minds, isn't there, that says, was it the medicine maybe? Or was it, were you maybe not really, are you a bit too excited? Generally speaking, it is easier for us, I guess, to not believe, or to not believe that those things can happen in some ways. We want them to happen. This is the human issue, isn't it? The believer's issue. We want it to happen, and we say, but our faith. So we need more faith. We want more faith. It's good in a way if we realize this, but we want to push for more. And this is why we're going to speak about this today. We want to push for more. We want to open ourselves up to what can God do, because He is not limited. We are limited. That is for sure, 100%. But God is not limited. Jesus is not limited. That's why we are here and saved, because He's not limited. If He were limited, we would not be sitting here. We would not be saved. There would be no eternal life. Coming to the story. Lazarus. What is that, the story before? Because we start basically in verse 17. Maybe we can put up the main passage. So if you want to look, the main, like the reference. Yes. So if you want to have a look. So 17. That's when Jesus already comes there. But what happens before? Lazarus was sick. And Jesus is informed. Lazarus is the brother of Martha and Mary. Okay, so they're all siblings. And Mary is the one, you might remember her. She's the one that poured the perfume on Jesus' oil and washed it or cleaned it with her hair. In verse 2, that description is given. That's that Mary. And the other one is Martha. And we know Martha and Mary have also this funny interaction where Martha's working and saying, Lord, Mary, she's doing nothing. I do all the dishes. I clean up all the cake from the people. And Mary just sits at your feet and is not helping me. Tell her to help me. And there's this interesting interaction. That's also those two, okay? Right. So Lazarus gets ill, and the sisters send word to Jesus. And this is obviously by a person in that time. It's by a person, not by letter, not by email. They send someone saying, look, He's ill. Basically, come, right? Help us out here. Then, Jesus, interestingly, he prophesies he will not die of this sickness. Okay, it seems serious, but that he will be glorified through it. And that's when he's taking his time. He gets the message. This is serious. The sisters say, this is serious. Jesus, please come. And Jesus delays for 2 days. He delays. He's not going straight away. We don't know what he's doing at this point. Is he doing another preaching? Is he talking with the disciples? We don't know. He seems to intentionally delay because he's God, remember? He's not like, accidentally, I didn't know that, I forgot about Lazarus. He intentionally delays so that he will be glorified. Again, as a testimony for people to know that he is sent by the Father. Now, when we come to our passage, on his arrival, now Jesus arrives, he eventually comes. Lazarus was already dead 4 days. Okay, so he's already died. He was ill by when he received the message, and now he's died. And Bethany, it tells us in verse 17, was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem. I checked on Google Maps how far that would get us. And it's from here, if you would walk from here to Aldi in Kilburn. You know Aldi in Kilburn? If you would, that's Jerusalem and Bethany. It's not too far, I guess. They didn't have buses, but they would be good walkers. If you're a good walker, 42 minutes, you could get there. 2 miles. At least 42 minutes according to Google. So if you're a Google pace walker, that's what you would do. So it's not too far. And Jesus probably could have been Jerusalem. So it wasn't too far, but he took his time. 19, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. Okay? Lost the brother. When Martha heard, verse 20, that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know, even now, God will give you whatever you ask. In Martha's character, we can see the struggle of every Christian. We go to Jesus. We come to Jesus. We say, Lord, why has this happened? Why have you not been here when this happened? But at the same time, there is this other side of faith that we say, but even now, God will give you whatever you ask. Why is she saying that? There is this hope, this spark in her of faith. That yes, there could be still something happening, somehow, but also she's a bit, I wouldn't say upset, but she's a bit of questioning why Jesus not hurried up a bit, because she knows the distance where Jesus was. That's why she could send word to. So there's these two aspects, and I think we can relate with that. Right? So she's open to believe that Jesus can still do something. That's the heavenly way. On the other side, the human way is the frustration. It happened. You haven't been here. Jesus, where are you? Do you ask this question sometimes? When you go through the week, it's like, Jesus, where are you? And then another thing happens, another bad thing, and you're like, Jesus, where are you? Have you ever had that? Or your life's so perfect? Have you ever asked this question? Yeah? No? Yes? Someone has? Yes, of course. Why has this happened? Where are you, Jesus? And yes, we know he's here, but at the same time, there is this struggle almost, this tension between our humanity and the faith that we want to have in him. So we need to be honest of that divide. We can't say, we're floating on a cloud, but also we cannot get lost in the frustration. We need to push over that. And Jesus intentionally delayed coming for greater glory. This is what he says. In a way, he waited for it to get to a point of no saving. Do you know what I mean? He could have done with these. He could have done something if he came earlier, but he left it that he went all the way beyond, what do you call that? Beyond salvation, beyond, beyond rescue. And that's interesting. He let it go into the impossibility to eventually show that he can do the impossible. And that would show what? It would affirm him as God. It would affirm him as divinity, as deity, as God. Because we have limits, as I said. Humans have limits. We have limits. I have limits. I can see my limits. I feel my limits. I realize my limits. But God has none. For me, things are possible and sometimes impossible. For God, nothing is impossible. It goes on. 23. Now Jesus responds, your brother will rise again. Your brother will rise again. And Martha says, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. That seems to be kind of a Christian believer's answer, no? Oh, he dies. Okay, we will, at the end of time. We look to the very end. And that's good because that's hope. We have the ultimate hope at the end, the final hope at the end. And that really is an amazing and probably the greatest encouragement ever. But interesting, Jesus turns this or uses this and he says, what does he say? He's not going to the far future, although he talked with them about the far future. He said, at the end of time, the Son of Man, everybody will hear the Son of God's voice and everybody will rise for judgment. The believers, obviously, will be acquitted through Jesus' blood, will get through, and the other ones for judgment, those who have rejected Jesus. So that will be at the end. She's not wrong. But Jesus makes a point here by turning something around. He says, Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. So we'll do that at the end. But also I am here right now. I have power and I can use my power. And it's one of the I am statements in John. I don't know if you've heard about the I am statements in John. Because in John, the Gospel of John, many times, around 7 times, Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. I am the... So this is one of the I am statements that define his character. And in this, I am the resurrection and the life, it kind of echoes, I can do something about this. I am the resurrection. It's not just something that will happen. But I am here. I am right here. And that echoes what God says to Moses when he says, I am who I am. That sounds okay. I am who I am, of course. We're all who we are, no? But in the Hebrew, the I am who I am means I am the one who exists. I am the one that exists. Because in this time, you remember the Jews, the Hebrews were in trouble in Egypt. It's like 400 years, God's not heard us. We're crying out to him. He's not listening. He says, yes, I am here. And yes, I will make a difference. I am the one who exists. Similarly, Jesus says here, I am the resurrection and the life. I am here. Something can happen. The power of God can come forth. And he's not, sometimes it's, it's not, okay. It's not that we see Jesus before we leave to work and when we come home, we're like, okay, he's waiting for us, right? He's at home, Jesus is at home. We have our quiet time before we leave the house. We do our work, we come back. Oh, hey, Jesus, how was your day? It's not like that. The I am is he's here continuously. When we go to work, when we struggle, when our work colleague comes at us, in a bad way. When something great happens, miracles, when we need a bus. And then when Neville is waiting for a bus, he's there. He's not waiting at home until Neville comes back from church. He is there. And that's what Jesus is stating here to Martha, to give her hope. He's not putting her down. He's giving her hope. And he's telling her, the one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Now, he knows her heart already. But sometimes Jesus is asking things for people to think about, and as well, we have it now. to say, do we believe this? Do we believe this? Even though they die. And yeah, we will all die. Right? There's an eventual death, but also Jesus will resurrect us from that. But also there is stuff right now that he wants to deal with, and that he opens himself up. These are his words. How can I measure how much faith I have in my personal life? We can look at our daily living and see how we live. Where do I look for help? Right? When I really am in trouble, where do I look for help? Yeah? Medicine is great, but God still should come before medicine. Google is great, but God should still come before that. Internet, amazing as well, but remember, God is first. Social media, scrolling, right? Don't know if that's too great. Sometimes I do it too much. I need to cut it down more and more. But still, God should be there before that, Our friends are amazing. I love having friends over, barbecues, whatever. But God is still, when we really need something, God should be our first place of reference, our first place of where we get help. Do you believe this? Do you believe this? Jesus says to Martha. Do we believe that he's the one and only source in life, here on earth and after? Sometimes we have this surviving mode, the surviving Christian mode, which is like at the end of time, everything will be all right. Now we just have to suffer and everything is miserable. And I'm a bit of a pessimist sometimes. So I'm a bit of that, at the end of time it will be great, but it's a bit rubbish, it's a bit miserable. But that's not what we should be doing. We should be looking at, have the hope at the end, but also have Jesus, the hope right now. And this is what he's bringing up. Okay? Life would look so much different. Oh, we need to grow. We all need to grow more. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she says. I believe that you're the Messiah, the Son of God who has come into the world. Martha is not some random person that sometimes believes, or she's a full-on Christian, okay, you could say. I know the term Christian's not yet invented, but she's a full-on Christian. She believes in Jesus. She looks to Jesus. They send word to Jesus because they knew there's the only help. Not only is he a friend, but we know this is the one. This is the one to come. And that's the beauty of it, because calling him made him come. If you don't call, he will not come. Yeah, he might come if somebody prays, but we don't need to be surprised if God doesn't do anything in our lives if we're not calling him, if we're not asking him to come in and say, Lord! And we can be desperate. Okay, we don't need to be religious. Jesus knows all the things about it, He confronted religion with the Pharisees. So we don't need to be religious. We need to be like a child. This is not working. When my son comes and there's a toy and something's broken, not working, he says, Papa, this is not working. It fell apart and I didn't do anything, but look, it's not working. And then I can fix it. If we will keep it under his pillow, I couldn't help him, and just cry about it. But when he comes to me, I can help him. We need to be like children, coming to God, calling out. And that's what she did. She's these two women are amazing, as we just had the International Day yesterday of women. These are very, very amazing women that we can, even men, we can take, we can take them as examples, how to live by. But we see also their weaknesses. But we all have weaknesses again, so. I believe that you're the Messiah. She believes, but she needs to grow. We all need to grow. It's something we will never finish growing until the end of our lives. There is always more in God because there is so much of God. Right. And we need to be persistent as the widow. I think I mentioned already, Luke 18. The persistent widow, she keeps asking God. She's not giving up. Discouragement is a big thing sometimes when we need to pray, when we ask God. We're often discouraged. I prayed already 100 times for this. Why praying 101 times? It's just not changing. Yes, we need to keep knocking like the widow. Right. Your brother will rise again. Okay. But what else? if we are in 28, after she has said this, she went back and called her sister, Mary. Mary comes to Jesus, and what does she say in 32? Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Lord, if you had been here. Same thing. She repeats her sister. If you had been here. And Mary was the one that poured out the perfume. Again, another believer. Not a random person. She repeats it. So Jesus, in this mindset, Jesus can heal the sick, the demon oppressed, but death, I'm not sure. Not sure if he can go that far. Hopefully, we believe it, but somehow there is this doubt in it when you read these lines. We have similar ideas, sometimes ourselves. We have similar ideas. We always need to compare ourselves with them and see, okay, what are the similarities? Jesus could heal in the first century, but now, sadly, that's no longer the case. Is that true? We'll see. Does Jesus have limits? Does his powers have limits? Or do we Christians limit Jesus in what he could do? It's probably that one, isn't it? We limit him very often. So who needs to change? God? Does Jesus need to change? No. I think it's us that need to change. It's our faith that needs to grow. How many times Jesus rebukes his disciple? You have little faith. Come on. I'm here. Stuff is happening. Believe. Believe. Pray. Go on. We need to grow in faith. We all need to grow in faith. There's always more levels. There's always more levels of faith. Interesting now, there's a shift in the story. There's this faith discussion, and now is in 33, when Jesus saw her weeping, so she was crying, moved. And the Jews who had come along with her also weeping. Jesus was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Why? And now we could doubt and say, okay, he doesn't know what he's doing, or why is he moved and troubled? I mean, he could do something, couldn't he? It doesn't really look in the English. You don't really see this in the English translation. But there seems to be some kind of, there is a grief. There is a grief, but there will be also an anger mixed with it. The deeply moved, in a German translation, is more towards anger. So he is a bit angry, but he's also sad. There is grief and there is anger. Why is there grief and why is there anger? Grief because of the compassion. He sees what death is causing. Ever since Genesis 3, death is causing enormous grief. Think about now, the wars, the people who the grief. There was just this video I saw, it's probably from a few years ago, when you saw, they filmed this boy, or there was the news or whatever, this Ukrainian boy going to the Polish border without family, anything, crying. This young boy, it was heart-wrecking. It was heartbreaking to see that. To see this boy all alone, crying, going to the Polish border with alongside many others. No more family. Family lost, gone, dead, who knows? Death, grief. And Jesus feels that grief. He's not indifferent. This is the thing. You know, we sometimes think, oh, he's up in the clouds. No, that's what people think as well outside. Oh, he's up in the clouds, the man with a white beard, and he doesn't care what we do. That's a Greek philosophy. That's not who Jesus is. He's grieved by what he encounters. But he's also angry at the injustice, at the death, because death is unnatural. We need to know. For us, because we're living in this world, death has become natural. We live and we see people die, and sometimes they die when they're young, sometimes they die when they're old, sometimes definitely when they're really old. So for us, it's become natural. But we need to say, biblically speaking and creation-wise speaking, death is not natural. Death is something came from the outside, from evil, as we let it, as we allowed it in. And that's why he gets upset. Because remember, what is he? Resurrection and life. So death would be his opposite. Death would be the one thing that he hates like nothing else. Sin as well, sin and death. And sin obviously causes death. So he really hates it. And that we can see in this passage. Some worship in the background. It's good. Praise the Lord. Where have you laid him? He's not just grieved and angry. There is an action. I love that. Jesus does things. He doesn't just talk about it like politicians. He does stuff, or most politicians at least. He does stuff, and he does the right stuff. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. Jesus wept. It just says Jesus wept. It's mentioned twice in the New Testament. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. The other time he weeps over Jerusalem because they have not realized that he was the one to come, that they have in the scriptures, that they knew all along, and they have not seen him, and therefore they will perish. Again, eternal death. Jesus wept. Jesus sees the grief, and Jesus grieves over our sufferings. Do you know that? Do you believe that? That the things that happen in your life that were not right, that were bad stuff that happened to your family, to yourself, do you know that Jesus is grieving over those things? He's not indifferent. He's not going to tell you, oh yeah, well that's life, so get on with it. Get a helmet. Someone said, no, just life, get a helmet. Life's tough, get a helmet. He doesn't say that. He says, he gets angered, he gets grieved at it. See how he loved him. And they see his love as well. It's again this anger, grief. Anger at evil and its consequences, and grief over what evil has caused and what is happening to us. 37, but some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Kept him from dying, not resurrecting. He's ill, he could have healed him before he died. Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, 39. And then Martha says, but Lord, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there for 4 days. I'm not a doctor, but I looked up a bit what 4 days will cause to a body. So if you have a weak stomach, don't listen now. By 3 days, eternal organs have decomposed. That's 3 days. 3 to 5 days after death, body will begin to bloat from gases produced from internal decomposition. Body could actually double in size and turn a greenish color. Extremely unpleasant and long-lasting odors. So there is another stage of the body where it looks different and it stinks. And imagine in this area of Israel where it's warm, no coolers, nothing. Imagine the amount. So she's like, oof, he's been dead for a while. It's very correctly, she says, there will be a smell, like a bad odor. But Jesus says what? Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? He wants to do a miracle. He wants to change something that's impossible to change. And he's pushing a bit. He's provoking. Jesus provokes often, but in a good way. So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. It's not just to do a miracle, it's that people see that he eventually will be the savior of the world. When he said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And it doesn't say much more than the dead man came out right away. His hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Death is broken. And it's not just eternal death. Jesus is now saying with this passage, what we can see here is, what does he say to us? I will resurrect the dead, yes. And people will get, they've rejected me, judgment. If they accepted me, they will come into my kingdom. That will happen at the end of the day. I will resurrect the people, but I can do things now while I'm on earth. Okay, he's not on earth now though, isn't he? Physically. He went to the Father. So does that not apply to us now, 21st century? What does Hebrews 13:8 say? Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And we have to believe in this, because many churches have rejected this. They say, well, Jesus is the same yesterday, and in the future. Yesterday and tomorrow is fine, but in the now, today, I'm not sure. Let's not be unbelieving, because when we unbelieve, Jesus cannot or does not do things. Remember when he comes to his hometown. Remember when Jesus comes to his hometown and it says he could not do, or he did not do a miracle because they did not believe. Our unbelief is worse than we think. Our unbelief that God is able is worse than we think. It can really stop the work of God. It can stop the miracles of God. In our lives, around us, in our towns, like in this town, in this town, right? Nazareth, it can stop the power of God if we do not believe. And also, even if the miracle happens, this is interesting sometimes, even if the miracle happens, there are, this is why we added 45 and 46, those two verses. Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. They believed what they saw. They saw Jesus, they saw what he did, they believed. But some, 46, some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. So there's others that work against him. There's some that say, this is the one. How could he not be the one? Come on. We know he was dead. We checked his pulse. We saw him, we got a bit of the smell or a bit of his, pale face. It's like he's dead. And now we see him alive. We believe. But then there's others who are also there, but they refuse stubbornly to believe. Guess who are the ones that will eventually be with him? Those who believe or those who did not believe? Let's not be those who stop believing. Let's not be those who sanitize our faith and say, Jesus can do something, but Jesus can do something. He will do it in his time. He will do it when he wants to. Yes. But let's push. Let's knock the door like the widow. Let's knock that door and let's ask him for miracles. Because he can give life now. He can give life at the end. He will give life at the end. He's always there. Yesterday, today, and forever. Jesus can do something in the now. And it doesn't need to be resurrecting the dead for your life. It could be, if you want to ask that. But it could be different things, because death can be in many areas, can it not? Death can be mental health in some ways. It's a death of hope. It can be, death of hope. Discouragement is some type of death. Death of our dreams is like, I always wanted to go to a place and be a missionary, and then everybody tells you no, or there's different circumstances that don't work. And it's like, well, this is not from God. Well, death in many ways. But Jesus is here today. He's here now. He's always been here, and he will always be here, saying, look, I can resurrect. I am the resurrection and the life. For whatever is the plan of God, and for what we ask him, there is hope. And we need to have faith in that. Oh yeah, but this family member that I have, he's never going to come to Jesus. I prayed for him 1,000 times. He's just a stubborn donkey. He's never going to make a step. No. It can happen. Keep knocking. Keep knocking. Jesus can resurrect in every way possible and give life in every way possible. And the biggest one of life, obviously, is eternal life, is salvation. But not just that. He points to it, not just eternal salvation. He does lots of stuff. Eternal salvation is the ultimate, but there's more for us in so many different ways. So let's stir each other up for that faith. And let's see, we'll have a last song that we're not gonna sing it as such, but it's a song of reflection. So as you hear the words, you might know it already, it's quite a well-known song. As you hear the words, be praying, be asking God and saying, Lord, maybe you say, I want more faith. Or you maybe situations come to your mind now, you say, in this situation I need faith. Lord, help me. Help my unbelief. Help me to see you resurrecting areas in my life that you want to see prosper. And maybe a large view. So let's not waste this opportunity. I know it's a Sunday morning, we might be tired, it's a nice day outside. But let's not waste this opportunity where God is offering us faith and helps us to grow